Good afternoon and welcome to BRR Media, broadcasting to you today live from CeBIT Australia, which is Australia's largest business technology conference, coming to you from the Sydney Convention Centre. My name's David Bushby from BRR Media, and I'm lucky to be one of the 30 to 35,000 people that are expected to walk through the doors here at the Convention Centre. And as you can see from behind me, plenty of action going on, and we've managed to round up a number of our panellists and speakers from various areas of the conference. And I'd like to, without further ado, introduce who we have today. Firstly, Trent Ewell is joining us. He's the CEO of FraudWatch, which is an enterprise business platform. Trent, thanks for joining us.
Great to be here.
And Dan Miller is also joining us. He's the Country Manager International for New Zealand and Australia for Splunk, which is an operational intelligence platform. And I guess you're riding high from a few awards last night.
Absolutely. Thanks, David.
Congratulations. Also joining us, we have Dudley Neller, who is a panellist, well, a partner with Madrix Lawyers in Melbourne, specialising in technology law. Welcome, Dudley.
Thanks, David.
And finally, we have Carl Maftoom from the ACMA, where he's the Chief Information Officer, and a big night for you as well. You've got a 6 p.m. launch for the ACMA beta website, which goes public.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Okay. Well, we might just get stuck straight into it. Dudley, if we can move to cloud first. The first question is data sovereignty and security in the cloud. Is it a problem or is it just perception?
I think it's both, David. We talked about a number of different things yesterday. The first being that Australian vendors have been very successful up to this point in preventing the entry of big US vendors into Australia, and those walls are breaking down now, and we've seen Amazon and Rackspace come in and are doing a pretty good job. Secondly, we had a bit of a chat about the Four Corners program on Monday night, which attracted a lot of controversy. There was some discussion around the difference between out-and-out espionage between nations and just plain old cyber hacking between companies as they try and obtain commercial advantage. Finally, we had a look at some of the risk mitigation strategies and talked about the entry of cyber-based insurance products into Australia as well, something that's been around for a little while in the US, but now we're seeing those products coming into the Australian market. So, yeah, we covered a lot in 30 minutes, and we had a few minutes for questions, but it was well attended and a good session.
Yeah, well, in terms of the you had the data breach provisions which came through in draft law yesterday, which was quite amazing, the timing with that, and I guess the Four Corners program, which is talking about data breach at a government level, whereas the government's also looking to impose obligations on the private sector. It all came together nicely this week.
It did, and I think we're all trying to catch up and work out what's happening with these new laws that were put to the Parliament yesterday. And I think it's just one more thing to add to the to-do list for your privacy compliance requirements, and be interesting to see what the broader reaction is once people digest what was sent to Parliament yesterday.
Thanks, Dudley. Well, Carl Maftoom at the ACMA, I want to talk to you about business mobility. What does, I should say enterprise mobility, what does that mean to my business?
Look, enterprise mobility is all about unlocking productivity and providing our staff the flexibility to work wherever and whenever they suits them and whether it fits in with their process. We had a great session upstairs this morning, and I was actually struck by the synergies between the public and private sector. It was an excellent mix on the panel, and how similar some of the issues that we all face are, and how similar the way we're actually solving some of these issues, in particular around the BYOD, which I think is one of the biggest things at the moment. We certainly have taken up the BYOD path, and that seemed to be common to my other panel members as well. And then we had quite a good session discussing these sort of interrelationships and synergies between our different groups.
Well, we're just talking about BYOD. I mean, do you find that the public sector is embracing that a little slower, maybe as one would expect compared to the private sector, or is it roughly neck and neck?
I think it's neck and neck. And I think the way we're solving the problems are very, very similar. Certainly, we find that we've had a reasonable take-up of BYOD devices. We find that people work very well with those BYOD arrangements, and I've certainly found that a lot of the issues that we've experienced, like ensuring that we still have control and retain a level of control over people's devices, are being solved in exactly the same way. And it was very heartening to hear that.
Yeah, we'll certainly keep a close eye on how that all proceeds. Trent, at Fraud Watch, I wanted just to turn to you. You gave you're part of an interesting presentation about social media and the way you're able to impersonate a brand in order to commit fraud. Can you run us through that?
Yeah, well, it's basically something I think a lot of companies aren't sort of focusing on. The marketing departments just want to get out there with their social media profiles. Cheap way to communicate with their customers. So I sort of did a few case studies and looking at some of our clients who have had some issues previously, where criminals have set up fake social media profiles, so Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn pages, impersonated a brand, and basically they go through a process where they, it's not a quick thing, but they'll do it over a number of months, and they will just put out the news that the company's putting out on their website, build up a lot of followers, and then they can use that for anything. So the case studies we looked at, they released a fake mobile app, and one of the other ones that we looked at, they actually directed them to a phishing page. So it was for a online trading company, and the criminals just said, "Hey, we've updated our page. Check out our new page, and here's the link." And it went to a phishing website. So they've had a lot of success with that, because phishing emails in general, the criminals are just sending out emails as spam, hoping that someone will actually click on a link, hoping they'll enter the details. But with social media, they can build up the trust, and they'll have a much higher success rate in actually having people entering their data, their details.
And with the case studies that you went through, are they really case studies that are involving the larger end of town, the enterprise businesses that are being targeted, or is it the small and medium-sized businesses? Who's most at risk, do you think? Yeah,
well, typically at the moment, and I think it's a very, very early days with this sort of fraud, but it's been the larger enterprise. It's been the companies that have large brands online, that have a lot of customers out there. So really, they're the main ones. But I think in time, it's just going to continue, and there's anyone who's got any sort of brand online really needs to be looking at these sort of channels and how they're protecting themselves.
Well, I also want to throw to the panel a little bit. I mean, there's the ACMA, or Dudley, you may have some experience as well in terms of social media risks, where you're relying on third-party applications to some extent to keep things secure and safe for your organisations. Have you come across similar sort of risks in your line of work?
The area I've come across is the difficulty in once you've established there's a problem with, or a client's let you know that they've got an issue, is working effectively with the Twitters of the world, because they have their policies and procedures and they follow them, and it's like getting blood out of a stone to try and get some traction with some of those American-based companies, and when a client's really hurting and is the subject of a very difficult social media campaign against them, they want things to happen quickly, and with Twitter and those guys, it doesn't happen quickly, and often you need to really up the ante and bring proceedings from a number of different perspectives to try and get a result for them.
Well, Kyle, you're about to go live with a massive undertaking, the new ACMA website. I do know that you've got a number of social media accounts. You must have plenty there to think about. Is this sort of thing on your radar?
Oh, look, of course it is, but we have the luxury of just being ourselves and promoting ourselves out there, unlike you guys who are sort of dealing with the more customer focused. But look, like all government agencies, we take security very seriously. It's something specifically in the mobile space, mobility space we've actually talked about as well this morning, was about some of the security issues that we have, and we talked a lot about the fact that security really is a lot about risk assessment. And the example I always use is, what is more insecure, the encrypted, fully secured iPad device, or the briefcase full of government documents? You can't remotely erase a briefcase.
Yep.
Whereas with something like iPads and those sorts of devices, it's very easy just to maintain that level of security and control. So for us, really, security the core is all about that risk assessment and being able to accurately identify all of the risks surrounding each of our ways going forward.
Dan Spiller at Splunk, I want to bring you in here. I guess your expertise is really in this concept of big data. And a lot of us probably think of big data as the number of tweets on any given day, or status updates, or the amount of data in YouTube that's uploaded, as we speak. But there's also, I guess, the concept of unstructured data, which is really your speciality. Can you talk us through what unstructured data is?
Sure, I mean, it's the things that you've talked about in some ways, and it's actually the things that all the guys have talked about right now. I mean, cloud creates a tremendous amount of activity across a lot of different technologies and platforms, which is unstructured data. The communication between machines and all of the machine-generated data that is created every time customers interact or internal users interact with technology platforms just creates a vast amount of data. And typically it's unstructured in that there is no predefined standardized format. You think about all the different technology platforms within organizations, they don't write out messages in a common format. So in that sense, they're unstructured. And with mobile devices, we're all trying to better enable the workforce. Organizations are looking for economies of scale and agility they can gain through deployment of cloud. And certainly everyone cares a lot about fraud and social media and security. And all of these things, to understand whether there are risks and whether there are opportunities, there's a tremendous amount of information that can be contained within all of this kind of data. So, at Splunk, we think a lot about machine data as being the area of big data that we can play a particularly valuable role in, but certainly it can be things like video files. It can be a lot of different areas.
Well, it almost sounds like that unstructured data is, in some ways, it's noise. I mean, how do you really unlock the value from all of that data if it is unstructured? Where do you see the opportunity for business and enterprise?
Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily a different proposition to that which we faced maybe going back 15 years ago when BI started to emerge as something that became very important to businesses. They understood that there was a lot of information that was contained within their organisation, and if they could better understand it and better interrogate it and get closer to looking at what the rhythms and patterns were in there that were contained within there were, they would be able to make better decisions and drive the business. I think part of what's happening with big data right now is it's the same process, and a lot of the same methodologies and approaches still apply. It's just a different category of data. Rather than transactional business data maybe coming out of ERPs and CRMs that's living in your data warehouse, this is now all of these other events that are taking place across your website, across your mobile devices, across the network devices as you build layers of protection to try and protect your brand, and as you look at what's being set out in social media. So being able to unlock the value from that will actually be different typically for different organisations. But those who are successfully able to do it by capturing it, lifecycle managing it, inspecting it and making sense out of it, ought to be able to gain a competitive advantage, because it's actually the rhythms of what's taking place in their business and within their interactions with customers that will be the thing that will drive them an advantage.
Well, even in the Four Corners report this week, we did hear reports of vast amounts of data being leached out of government agencies, for example, is I guess was the story, and the amount of the sheer raw data that would have to be sifted through. Is I guess government agencies one of your target markets that would use the big data service? Or sorry,
Sure. I mean, we have government customers in this market, maybe a little more mature in the US, where we've got a very strong presence in the federal in the US, and absolutely, one of the enablers of our technology, but we're not the only one, is the ability to sift through that, that kind of size of data. We have one customer in the States who collects 100 terabytes of data per day and runs real-time search and analytics for hundreds, if not thousands of users, understanding what's going on. Now that's for a lot of different reasons. And again, one of the characteristics of big data is it's not predefined what that insight will be. It's actually bespoke to the person who needs to know something. It's just giving them an enabling technology framework, and Splunk is one platform that can do that to allow them to get access to it and make sense out of it relatively quickly, and in some cases in real time.
Well, I guess that partly relates to you, Carl, and your agency as a regulator in the digital space. The data you guys must have to look through would be vast.
It's good questions. I was actually about to take that up with Dan, because obviously where BI is very important to my business, and analysing those trends, but also being able to respond to an ever-changing regulatory and legislative environment. How do you see the intersection there between, you mentioned before, the previous BI work and now, I guess, big data, and how do you see that going forward and what the relationship with them are?
Well, right now, I think it's. I mean, I think they'll continue to be both. Again, we see them as maybe different solutions for different categories of data, but nonetheless, they're both inherently valuable to an organisation. So if you think about the security world and the fraud world over here, you could be looking at having, that more traditional structured data that we've always had, the watch lists, the things we know are bad. And then there's all the unstructured, rapidly growing, more difficult to harness, real-time data that's coming in there from the threats and attacks. How do you marry those two things together? Well, there are ways you can do that. So we see right now the ability to collect all of that real-time data and then add context to it based on the traditional BI structured data that we use for making those traditional business decisions as being the thing that the more advanced customers are now integrating those two and leveraging real-time data, but also enriching it based on the business data that they have in their data warehouses.
Well, guys, some fantastic insights. So we're starting to run out of time a little bit. I do want to probably just finish off with one quick question to each of the panellists today. Carl, I might just start with you. I mean, if there was just the one thing circulating around the various conference halls and in the exhibitions, is there one thing that I guess you learnt that has maybe blown you away?
It's a very, very good question. Look, I'll go back to my original comment. What has blown me away more than anything else is the direct synergies between what government and the private sector are doing in the mobile space, and how far that has come. If you think about it, the iOS devices were only released in Australia, I think 5 years ago in 2008, maybe late 2007, and how far we've come in that 5 or 6 years, to the point now where we have BYOD, where we have your, for us, your video, I demonstrated in the panel session, a video conference to my iPad upstairs from the internal telephone system at the ACMA. The fact that we've come that far in 5 years is unbelievable, and I think the growth over the next 5 years is going to be fantastic.
Dudley, what's caught your attention over these past few days?
Look, I'm a little bit like Carl. The level of sophistication and where we seem to have come from in the last 5 years or even over the last 12 months is amazing. One of the questions that was asked in our session is, what do things look like in the next 12 months? And I think none of the panellists were able to say, because they said, look, things are happening so quickly and changing so fast that we can't tell you what we're going to be talking about in the next 12 months, other than we're on this journey. From a legal perspective, we're trying hard to keep up with that, but I think we're failing badly, but we're trying. So the technology is moving so fast and the customers are now more sophisticated than ever.
Trent, how about you? Number one?
Look, it's so broad here. It's hard to sort of pinpoint something, but look, I think very similar to what's already been said. But I guess just with the risks that need to be looked at really, and not even sure, like you said, what we're going to be talking about in 12 months' time, how technology is going. So even the risks of where things are going with social media. Well, 5 years ago, how was that going to be a big issue? Now it is, and even the big data, and it's all just moving so fast. So
Absolutely.
I think just need to try and stay on top.
And finally, Dan, what about you?
Look, I think the clarity that everything is increasingly being consumed as a service. You walk around here and you see how many people are now talking about their technology as being available as a service. And also I think the blurring of the lines a little bit between maybe competitors and sometimes customers and co-opetition, and we hear about a lot of these kind of things. We walk around here and we see some people that maybe we compete with, we see other people that are here who are customers, and so I think it's interesting that how organisations are more quickly evolving and changing their business models, that the sands shift pretty quickly, so that's been interesting.
Absolutely. Well, it's been a fantastic chat. Thanks for all your time. Just throw in my little piece. I saw my very first 3D printer that's sitting just behind me. Read all about it, but I've never seen it in the flesh. So very excited to see that, and a revolution in itself, I'm sure, and maybe a topic for next year's CeBIT. But that's enough from me. My name's David Bushby from BRR Media. I would like to thank CeBIT Australia for hosting us and having the opportunity to broadcast live from the venue, and we hope to see you all next year.